This Week in Startups is brought to you by
Kaptara. Find the software that will help you do what you do better. Join the millions of people who use Kaptara every month. To start your search today, visit kaptara.com/twist. And Squarespace. Start building your website today at squarespace.com. Enter offer code TWIST at checkout to get 10% off.
Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of This Week in Startups. I'm your host, Jason Calacanis, and this is the show where we talk to founders about starting great companies. And my guest today is Andrew Mason. You know him because he founded Groupon, which everybody fell in love with during the Web 2.0 era, and is still doing strong, by the way. And then he did Detour, and now he's got a new product he's going to show us today, debut for the first time. We need to have some 20th Century Fox, what do they call that? Tiffany when they... Dun, dun, dun. Da, da, da. How you doing, Andrew? Welcome to the program.
I'm great. Thanks for having me.
Welcome back. So everybody knows you founded Groupon, and that's turned out to be a real business, huh?
Who'd have thought?
Who'd have thought? It kind of had this crazy whipsaw up and down. It was kind of the poster child of web... Is that Web 2.0? When did you?
We were definitely, when we were starting in 2007, Web 2.0 was the thing.
Yeah, it was kind of winding up.
Yeah, I mean, I think of Flickr and Delicious and things like that when I think of Web 2.0. Right. And then we just entered this kind of
weird moment
era in the middle, and Groupon was in there.
And it grew obviously very fast.
Yeah.
IPO'd, still public, right?
Still public, yeah.
And has real revenue, makes over $1 billion, I think.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
But you moved on, and you took a little bit of a break, I think, a breather.
Yeah, I left in the beginning of 2013. And let's see, I moved out here to San Francisco.
From Chicago. You were in Chi-Town.
I recorded an album of motivational business music.
Yeah. How did that do? Did it chart?
Well, I mean, it's hard not to see its impact as you look around at the way businesses are being run today. So
yeah, no, it's been deep.
It's humbling.
It's humbling in that way.
To be able to have that kind of a contribution.
Yeah, it is. It really is.
So the lessons really took hold, and I felt like, a lot of people said, Andrew, why not just retire after completing that album?
Exactly. It was kind of like that way. It was like the Black Album in the way for Jay-Z, where he's just like, this is it. I'm gone. I'm done.
Yeah. And I think people didn't want a Bowie or Elton John kind of situation where, you just are doing bad work after that because you can't top that. But
hanging around. You don't want to hang around.
And indeed, back and better than ever with Descript.
Yeah. So before we get to Descript, which blew my mind when you showed it to me, I don't know if you showed it to me 18 months ago or something.
Yeah, a couple of years ago.
A couple of years ago, you showed it to me and you were like, hey, I'm working on this thing. And I was like, oh yeah, let me see that thing. Because I always love serial founders when they have something that they're sort of toying around with. But you had started in between, and we had you on the program, I believe, for Detour. Yeah. Which were these great tours you do on your phone. How did that do? It seemed like a very clever idea. Obviously, Apple loved it. Yeah. And walking tours seemed to be a thing.
Yeah. Walking tours, turns out, aren't a thing.
They're not a thing.
That's part of what we knew we were going up against when we went into it. So for people who haven't tried it, what Detour is a mobile app that takes you on these guided walks, maybe 45 minutes long through cities. And it's all GPS based and highly immersive. It feels, your phone is in your pocket. You feel like you're just walking around with somebody who's a local, and really an incredible way to explore the city. The problem is, when people think of audio tours, they're not thinking, oh yeah, that's the way.
Let's go.
That's what I want to do this weekend.
I'm all in.
They're thinking of some lame experience they had at a museum. Right. And when people think of walking tours, it's not much better. Now, people who actually go out and take Detour have a great time doing it, and they do it again and again. So the response to the product has been great, and we're really proud of what we built. But it's been hard as a standalone company, especially in travel, to get the word out and get people to make that commitment to taking a couple hours out of their day to do something that every signal that they have leading up to that point in life is, this isn't so good.
You kind of get the value from it after you've done it. Yeah. Is one of the challenges of a business like that. Yeah. And tourism is hard. It's a very fragmented space, and a lot of people are trying to do, the number of times I've been pitched on the tour aggregator.
Yeah.
We're going to be the Yelp of tours. We're going to be the tour eBay. We're going to be the Uber of tours. It just really never materializes. But they are a great way to go around the city. So while you were building that, though, you had an insight, and I think that led to Descript. Am I correct?
That's right. Yeah.
So tell us what that insight was, because interestingly, if I have my history correct, Groupon also came out of a pivot, because the original company that Groupon was in, or the startup, was some sort of a petition software you were doing, correct?
Basically, yeah. It was called The Point, and it was all around this idea that you get a tipping point of interest in people doing something, whether it's taking action or collecting money. And once you get there, then everybody will commit. And one of the ways that we applied that idea was group purchasing, and we saw that really take off. And that's when we really focused, just as much as we pivoted in on the Groupon use case.
Got it. So it's not exactly a pivot. It was more like, oh, people want to use this platform, The Point, to negotiate group deals.
Right.
And people love group deals. And you just get this massive, like, if we all do this, we get a massive deal. Great, let's go.
Yeah. And everything else they were using it for was kind of ill-conceived. So, so for example, like we had the Juggalo community was organizing to get drugs legalized, and
that doesn't seem to have stopped them either way. The result of that tipping point,
they're a resilient bunch.
They are. Do you ever see the documentary of the Juggalos?
I have, yeah.
It is so amazing. Like, it really is. Like, I kind of feel like we should go
to the conference that they have.
They have like the festival of the Juggalos. I kind of feel like you're the person who I should go with, because
I remember at one point in my life feeling like, I kind of want to go to North Korea just to, maybe get maced or
something,
have something. And then I decided not to do it.
Right.
And I think it was the right decision. And I think
this might fall into
if we play this idea through, we'll feel the same way.
We'll get to that point where going to a festival in the middle of a swamp with a bunch of people doing methamphetamine and wearing clown makeup.
How could it go wrong?
What could go wrong?
Yeah.
The police have now made the Juggalos, I don't know if you know this. This is their kind of big complaint. The Juggalos are now like a terrorist organization. They've been put on like the watch list as some sort of like an organized crime family because of the stuff associated.
Right. Yeah, I saw something on YouTube where one of the chief Juggalos in the band, Insane Clown Posse, was appearing at a court, speaking on behalf of his people,
of the Juggalo contingent. Yeah. All right. So put all that aside as we take our detour into Descript. What was the moment where you came up with the idea for Descript, and what is it?
Okay. So,
and we're going to do
Detour,
a demo, obviously.
In addition to making this technology, we were making a ton of content. So we made over 100 hours of walking tours and recorded hundreds of hours of voiceover. And as we were getting into Descript, I thought, this is in my sweet spot. My degree is in music technology. I worked in a recording studio for a couple of years out of college, and I thought I knew this stuff pretty well. But it turns out, like, all of these audio production tools are designed with music in mind. And even then have a huge learning curve. And we had imagined Detour being a platform where anyone would be able to create the content. And we just realized as we were doing these voiceover sessions that was a non-starter. I mean, even for professionals, we were spending 2 or 3 times as long as we were spending doing the editing of the voiceover after we recorded it. So we had a pretty basic insight, which is what if you could edit audio by editing text instead of looking at this timeline of waveforms? You could actually see the words and edit those. Wouldn't that be cool? And
like a transcript. Edit the transcript as opposed to edit the sound file and the wave file that you see on whatever sound editing tool you're using. Yeah.
And this is a couple years ago, and we're in the middle of this explosion progress around speech to text transcription accuracy, where if you have the right quality of audio, algorithms could actually understand what you're saying better than humans can.
Right.
So we looked into that, and indeed we found there was someone at Berkeley getting his PhD in specifically this idea of aligning audio on top of text and then making any edits you make in the text follow through to the audio. So we hired him and we started working on this, and now we're about to launch it, and it's the world's first audio word processor, and it lets you edit audio by editing text.
And when I saw this, I have to say, like, I immediately, I don't remember what my exact reaction to you was, other than take my money, this is going to be huge, stop doing Detour, or just get focused on this. Because as a podcaster, for whatever the last 8 years or 9 years, I know the pain point of transcripts have been so hard. Machine translated stuff has been weak, but it's getting better. So that's kind of intriguing. When you put on the captions on a YouTube video, it's almost accurate. It's like it's getting really more accurate than you would think. And just editing it down is so hard. And then you think about, you have these NPR competitors now, and they're really good, This America Live or Serial, at creating moods and editing stuff. And you're like, how do they do all that? It's like, well, they have these incredible audio engineers, but I want to do it myself. All right, so let's go to a quick break. And when we come back, Andrew Mason is going to demo for the first time Descript on This Week in Startups. Yes, Kaptara, Capterra. It's that time of year again. The days are short, and you don't have time to waste sifting through search results looking for the best software to solve your business need. That's where Kaptara comes in. Kaptara.com, Kaptara.com. Whether you're a startup looking to keep better track of customers or a business that simply needs better payroll software, Kaptara has you covered. You can search their 400 categories. I like to browse through. It's a great website, just like Yelp, with all these reviews of the software, and you get to go through the directory and find what you're looking for. And the best part is it's free for you, absolutely free. And you get all of those ratings from real users so you can make a great choice. And it's absolutely free. 2018 is going to be here before you know it, and you've got to get that software you need lined up to hit the ground running in the new year. And that's what you're going to do with Kaptara. Capterra/twist. Kaptara.com/twist. Kaptara.com/twist. Go ahead and join the millions of people who use Kaptara. It's a great website. They don't offer the software themselves. They're a directory of all the best software in the world with independent ratings and reviews. And they're going to help you find the product and service you need to get your business needs accomplished. There's software up there that you may not even know you need. So if you're one of those efficiency experts, you're a founder, and you like to make your startup more efficient or your big business more efficient, go ahead and visit those 400 categories and browse away. Browse away to your delight, because it's absolutely free. And read the ratings. I love reading ratings. Go ahead and go to Kaptara.com/twist, Kaptara.com/twist. Thanks again to the fine folks at Kaptara for making such a useful product. Okay, let's get back to this amazing episode. Hey everybody, welcome back to This Week in Startups. I'm your host, Jason Calacanis. You can follow me on Twitter and Instagram. I'm at Jason. You can follow the show at TWI Startups, TWI Startups. And our new podcast is Angel the podcast. Go ahead and visit angelpodcast.com. And if you love the show, Angel or This Week in Startups, please do us a huge favor. Write a review on iTunes. Yes, that really helps. If you haven't done so already, go buy the book, angelthebook.com. All right, that's all the plugs I can give you. Today, my guest is Andrew Mason. He is the founder of things you know like Detour and Groupon, and he's going to show us Descript for the first time, which is a word processor for editing audio files. It's Microsoft Word for podcasts and any audio file. And it's going to literally change, I believe, the entire industry of podcasts and talk radio in ways that even Andrew maybe doesn't understand. I think it's literally going to, even though you've been working on this for almost 2 years, I think this is going to literally create a boom in people creating audio experiences. So let's take a look at it.
I almost want to be skeptical of that so that I can just get you to talk about it more.
Exactly.
But
I'm not sure, Jason. No, let me tell you, your business is going to be huge, I tell you. I really think it's good. I think you're creating the next Adobe. Like, I think you're creating a tool that will just replace everything in this audio space. And your timing is so perfect. Like, podcasting is becoming so big and Audible is so big. People are loving the spoken word right now.
All right, let me show people what we're talking about.
Yeah, here we go.
So this is Descript. This first version is a Mac app. And I open it up and I just get a blank document. And I can take an audio file. Here's a short example to demo the concept. Hopefully you can hear it over there. Because I'm not hearing it on my computer. Right. And I drag it in there. And
for those people who are just listening, by the way, it looks like an app on your desktop, and he dragged an audio file in. Yeah. Just a sportscast.
And for the first thing it does is automated transcription, and it's incredibly accurate, up to 95% accurate for the right type of audio, and incredibly fast. So you can transcribe a 2-hour audio file in a couple of minutes. It looks like we may be having some internet connection issues, but that's no problem. It would just pop open the audio, and this is basically what a document looks like here. So this is a tutorial file that ships with Descript, and I could just play, and you'll see the playhead move along with the audio.
Yep. Perfect.
And then its real superpower is I can go in here and select words, just like so. And you can see it's also highlighting the waveform. And when I press delete, it deletes it not just from the text, but from the audio as well. I can also go in if I want to and use the waveform editor to do all of the things that you would traditionally do. But now it basically gives me the power to cut and copy and paste and move things around. You know, the way I think of it is text and print. People that work in print have this superpower for their medium, which is the ability to thoughtlessly edit what you're working on,
right.
You know, and we're taking that superpower, the ability to edit without friction, and bringing it to other talk-driven forms of media, starting with audio and eventually taking it to video as well.
And so now, instead of a producer working with an audio editor, a producer just does it in their own head, in their own desktop, and they never have to engage an audio editor.
Yeah, and you know, even if you do know how to use those tools, you're constantly flipping back and forth between your editorial brain and your engineering brain.
Right.
Right? It's like, oh, you have to look at the waveform and you have to do this technical exercise. And there's, other than just being faster and easier to learn, Descript is more fun. It's like it's more delightful and expressive to be able to work with text. You know, when we started showing, it's funny, like you were one of the first people we showed this to, and you had such a strong reaction, and then we would parade people through the office and show them Detour and then show them Descript, and we saw something similar over and over. And people who worked in audio professionally, we would hear, oh, I've had this idea for 20 years and trying to get people to build it. So it feels like an inevitability, whether it's us or someone else. Like the technology has just reached a level of sophistication where such a thing is possible.
Which piece of technology is it that is enabling this right now?
Well, it's a combination of the accuracy of automatic speech recognition reaching a threshold where it's actually usable.
Right.
And then technology that we've built that aligns the audio to the text.
Got it.
So it's
really two things. Yeah.
Yeah, and you can kind of see this in the app as you scroll along the waveform. You can see that we know the beginning and end point of every single word. And it allows me to do like razor precise cuts either through the waveform editor or through the
And as you're doing this for people who are listening, you're increasing the amount of space between words.
Right.
So if I was talking really fast, like a guy from Brooklyn is talking like this, and then, but sometimes I may leave a couple spots in between. But then I go back to my talking really fast, like from Brooklyn. You could take that and edit out and add some space between words. And then you could take the and you could pull that in.
Yeah, right, exactly. It's really easy to edit out stutters or whatever I just did there.
Right.
So not everybody has the gift of being able to just express their thoughts as fully formed sentences. Most people don't. And that's a limitation. That's, as we've seen audio as a medium, as a consumption medium explode.
Right.
It's still very hard to make the content. And we're trying to create the tools, to reinvent the tools that really allow the content to proliferate in the way that it can.
It's very interesting that you talk about the state of mind of the person editing the video. I think as the performer in sometimes these cases, you really have to think about what medium you're on. So when I am doing CNBC as an example, I know I have a finite amount of time before I've got to pass the ball back to the person interviewing me or host. So I've got to talk in sound bites. I've got to be crystal clear, and I've got to educate people. Whereas on the podcast, I can have a warmer, let's take our time and unpack this a bit. And then when I'm live and on a stage, I'm going for laughs and I'm trying to engage the audience, right? And it really is over decades of doing this, really 25 years of my career, I'm doing podcasting, radio, TV, and live events. I know how to just switch. When you're live, you have to keep that audience in mind. When you're in the radio, you're doing an hour-long podcast versus doing soundbite stuff. And it is true that a lot of people who are the subjects, they don't know exactly how to answer the questions for that medium. And this does let you, like they do on NPR, when they get this rambling person, they know when they're doing serial, okay, I got to get this somehow for this person to say it cleanly, and succinctly. And they typically build around sound bites.
One of the things that shocked me when I started working on Detour, and we had former NPR reporters on staff. And we tend to think of that medium, and NPR in particular, as being the super high integrity form of content.
Yeah.
The degree to which they edit the hell out of what people say.
Crazy.
No, it's all high integrity edits, but it's still not what they said. I mean, to things you could never do with video because of the visual element of it.
Right. You can't cut a person and take out 2 or 3 words and ums and ahs, because you would have a video that is jumpy, making like a robot move. And like on radio, they do this all the time. And I had this debate with Brooke Gladstone from On the Media on her podcast, because on the media, because I was saying, listen, if you had integrity and you really stood behind what you're doing, you would release the audio files of the full interview I'm doing here. Mm-hmm. Why don't you do that with all subjects? And she's like, well, we like to put context around it so people can understand it. And I'm like, I know that, but why not give people both choices? Well, we don't want to have a misunderstanding between what we edit and what. And I was like, well, what's the misunderstanding we're talking about here? You have a source file, and you're saying that the source file doesn't line up with the original, so you're misquoting people. And you could tell when I was, kind of pushing her on this issue, that it was uncomfortable for her to even consider the fact of giving the source material
for obvious reasons. Why would somebody voluntarily open themselves up to that? Like, I think you're totally right. That'd be great, but it's only going to happen if consumers force it.
Right. Or in the case of podcasting, people kind of just do it naturally, and they say this is an unedited podcast. But it's fascinating too on this issue. How the edit is really how you're presented. You and I know this as subjects, as CEOs. How many times were you misquoted, when running Groupon? And you guys went through some up and downs where you were under a real microscope. How many times did you feel they got it accurately? The journalists were accurate, Well,
it's not about being misquoted, like them saying, like getting the words wrong, which I think is one of the misperceptions. It's always about the framing,
right?
And taking something out of context, and I think what you're suggesting would be a great service, and I think it would be great if media companies released the source material.
60 Minutes has been doing it. They'll release the fuller interview and stuff like that. But I remember when I was on 60 Minutes, the producer back then asked me 4 or 5 times, and he was going into Bob Simon's ear, to have Bob Simon ask me over and over again to try to get me to say something. And the producer was literally coaching me. Well, the answer we're looking for here is, can you speak to this? And I was like, yeah, no, I wouldn't take the bait. And I said, you can ask me the question 5 different ways. I'm going to give you the same answer. I understand what you're going for, but like you really do try to get manipulated. So let's talk a little bit about that manipulation and what's possible with this, because we're going to hit a moment of truth. We both know this, where people are able to completely edit and make people say things that they didn't actually say. This same technology that you're using to enabling the editing, isn't this the same kind of thing that people are using to make these like Obama soundboards where you can have Obama say something incredibly offensive, and then people are releasing sort of edited sound bites and computers are going to be able to speak for us?
Well,
how close are we to that?
We're pretty close.
Yeah.
There's APIs and demos out there right now of this kind of Photoshop for voice concept.
Photoshop for voice. That's what I was
Now, what you're talking about, just doing a soundboard, is pretty rudimentary, and I suppose somebody could do something like that with Descript. Ultimately, like our goal and what we're building is trying to create a tool that makes it easier to create highly crafted content, like really, really well done to make people more effective at expressing the ideas that they want to express, to make it easier for people to create this stuff and to make people sound better when they're getting these ideas across. But inevitably, there are going to be people that come out with the ability to create synthesized speech models based off of celebrities or whatever it is. And we're heading towards a future where audio and video content are subject to the same sort of scrutiny that we now put print and images to.
Yeah, we have to. I mean, if you just think about it, we've had multiple instances where documents have been, doctored, or photos obviously doctored all the time. And so we just have to get, I think consumers have to have in their minds that already audio and video can be massaged in a way that is not accurate.
That's right. People can already do this sort of thing. Now, Descript isn't doing anything to synthesize speech, or we're making it easier to edit speech. We are looking at that stuff, and you can imagine it would be great for pickups. But there's things that people can do to, if you're going to train a voice model based off of your voice, randomly present people with phrases that they have to record in real time in order to train that model as a form of opt-in.
Right.
So there are things that we're looking at as we explore those technologies to make sure that it's used in all the ways that are going to unlock people's creativity and minimize the malicious uses.
The pro to this is that I think is kind of interesting is I just went through recording my audiobook, and this was arduous. And it would be very interesting if I could train a model of my voice. Then if I wrote a blog post, it could export and actually make an audio file of me reading it without me ever having to go in the studio. We're very close to that too, right?
Yeah, there are services that do that. It doesn't sound. There's still work to be done, but you can create demos now using different services out there of your own voice synthesized.
It'll be really interesting too, because I think with the dead actor thing and people die, and I think they got. Spoiler alert, if you didn't see The Force Awakens by now, catch up because the new movie comes out this Friday. They took Obi-Wan Kenobi, which was Alec Guinness's version. He had said something that had the word Rey in it. And it might have been array or something. I don't know the exact situation, but let's say it was array. I'll get the communications array. And then they edited that Rey into this montage scene of Obi-Wan calling to Rey to get the lightsaber in that movie. The future is going to be, and they actually did a digital version of Princess Leia in Rogue One from back then. You're going to have the ability to have actors who have passed away just keep performing.
For sure. And that happens all the time in any form of audio editing and video as well, where a producer will make an edit and they'll need the actor to say something that they didn't say. And then you have an engineer go back and listen to everything that person has ever recorded for a particular combination of phonemes.
Wow.
And then you copy and paste it. The nice thing about Descript is you can just search.
Right.
You can just type in the word that you're looking for and do next until you find one that sounds the way you want it to sound, and then copy and paste.
When we get back from this quick break, can we talk about dropping in sound? Because if I remember correctly, you were able to drop in sound and do that. Can you demo that or no?
That's a alpha feature that's coming up soon. We can talk about it for sure.
When we get back, we'll talk about some of the alpha features and some of the ideas of what will be in Descript. If you don't have Descript yet, it's just launched. Go to Descript.com, Descript, Descript.com. What does this cost? Like $1,000? What's the cost? $1,000 in a package software?
We have two versions.
Okay.
The main version is normally $20 a month, but for a limited time, it's $10 a month. And transcription is 7 cents a minute. And then if you want to use it for free, there's a free version that doesn't have any of the audio editing. It's really just for people that are occasionally getting things transcribed. And that's 15 cents a minute.
This makes no sense to me, Andrew. Like, do you understand this is like a professional business? Like, this is way too cheap. $10 a month?
If you want to give us more money.
$100 a year, $120 a year. Like, it's way too cheap. Like, if you're doing professional audio, engineers get paid, like the cheapest ones, $20, $30 an hour, and probably up to $40 an hour. This is going to save them hours a day or an hour a day. You're grossly underpricing this. What's this pricing strategy?
All right. Well, you heard it here, folks. You better hurry out and buy Descript before I raise prices. I can't withstand this pressure much longer.
No, I'm dead serious. How did you come up with this pricing? Are you just because you think there's enough people to have a low price, or you just want to start low and then see if you have pricing power later? Just for me as a podcaster, like I don't want to. I want to see the company be more sustainable. I'd rather pay a higher price, like 7 cents a minute for a transcript, hour-long episode. I'm not perfect at math, but this is like too cheap.
Yeah, I mean, there's people who are doing this work that are like you, and then there's more entry-level people who are on a really tight budget, and we want to get it in the hands of as many customers as we can early on. Like I said, it's entry-level pricing, and it's not going to be $10 a month forever. But for now, we're looking at what people are paying for other forms of audio production tools and what people are paying for transcription services elsewhere. That's the price we came up with.
I don't know if I agree with this. All right, when we get back, we'll talk about some of the more powerful features coming to Descript on This Week in Startups. Hey, everybody, let me take a minute to thank Squarespace. Squarespace is how we build all of our beautiful websites. Yes, the Launch Festival and the Launch Festival Sydney, all these great websites that we build out, we use Squarespace because they have beautiful templates and it's easy to use. We can customize the website and it's responsive on iPhones, Android phones, tablets, web browsers of all sizes. And this is one of the key things you want in a content management system. Something like Squarespace makes beautiful, beautiful websites in seconds. And I am not kidding. You just pick a template and you can turn your cool idea into a beautiful website to showcase your work. You can blog, you can showcase content, photos. You can even sell products now because they have all kinds of e-commerce hooks into it that they've built out. And it's just included in the product. And this is one of the great things about the SaaS business model. That's what software as a service. Essentially, you pay a fee, and the company keeps making the software better and better and better and better and better, and you get all of those improvements as part of your Squarespace package. You can customize everything. You can buy domains. They have 200-plus extensions. They give you analytics. They've got built-in search engine optimization, and it's free and secure hosting. It's very secure, and that's critical when you're picking somebody to host with. They've got tons of resources over there at Squarespace. So go ahead and check out squarespace.com for a free trial. And when you're ready to launch, use the offer code TWIST and you'll save 10% off your first purchase of a website or a domain. Make it yourself. Yes, you can easily create a website by yourself. You don't need a developer or a designer anymore. Nope. No product manager. This has all been made, click, 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 easy peasy, lemon squeezy. Get in there and easily make it yourself. And you can make it stand out with these beautiful, gorgeous templates. And that's one of the things. Every time you log in, you're going to see all these beautiful templates. And then you log in a couple of months later, and there's more beautiful templates. They're constantly evolving and enriching the Squarespace platform. That's one of the great things about being involved with Squarespace. And it's just great for us because every time we have a new idea and we go build a new website, we get it up in minutes, and anybody in the organization can edit it, and we're not beholden to some consultant who built the website 5 years ago who nobody can find, and maybe they're in Costa Rica, or they may have gotten a job and we don't know where they are. Make your life easy. Make your life beautiful. Make your vision a reality. Use Squarespace, and make sure when you check out, use that offer code TWIST and get that 10% off your first purchase. Okay, thanks so much, Squarespace. And go ahead, you the loyal listener. Go ahead and say thank you at Squarespace on your Twitter for supporting This Week in Startups. Okay, let's get back to this amazing episode. Welcome back to This Week in Startups. My guest is Andrew Mason. You can follow him on the Twitter, Andrew Mason. Are you active on the Twitter?
Not really.
Not really?
No.
You used to be.
I used to be. I mean, Twitter is a service that I feel like it just makes me feel bad. I feel like it's not clear that the world wouldn't be better off if it didn't exist. Are you an investor? Sorry about that.
No, I'm not. And I have to agree with you. Like, I'm addicted. I feel like I have a Twitter addiction. And when I was writing the book, I took it off of my phone and I said, I'll just use it on my desktop. And my life was better. And I feel like social networks, I don't know if you saw today, a story came out about Chamath Palihapitiya, who worked on the growth team at Facebook, saying he doesn't let his kids use Facebook. He thinks this is a horrible thing for society. He has regrets about it. It does feel like social networks, since I have you here and we're going to talk a little shop, social networks are not a net benefit to society right now at this moment. You feel that way too?
I mean, I feel pretty clearly about that way about Twitter.
Mm-hmm. What about Facebook, Instagram, and these kind of things?
I don't feel like I'm enough of an expert to have a strong opinion. I can see how people get value out of Facebook. I can see how it does a lot of harm too.
Yeah, this Russian stuff and manipulating people seems to be.
Yeah.
Like, it's obvious that this is possible.
Yeah, I mean, I've always tried very hard to steer myself away from doing startups with an advertising business model where your customer is not actually your customer, but your advertiser is your customer.
What's wrong with the advertising model in your mind? Why do you steer yourself away from it?
Because it just creates this macro incentive for you to optimize for the advertiser,
right?
Which means that you're focused. I mean, when you think about media in particular, here you have what is the role of the media or journalism? Well, the role really should be to get information from one point to another to help people understand. So in a lot of ways, it's like the Department of Transportation.
Right.
Now imagine if the actual Department of Transportation got its revenue by the amount of time you spent on the roads.
Yeah.
The roads would be a nightmare.
Yeah.
Right. So it's just like basic incentives.
More construction.
And so it doesn't matter how high integrity you are as a journalist, or whatever it is, you're always competing with people who are willing to, who are willing to go further to grab your attention. And we're just seeing more and more I think it's always been that way.
Right.
And technology is just amplifying the rate at which it gets worse.
And it feels like this amplification, I think is a nice way to say it, has reached some level in which we cannot come back from it. Like, it feels like we've left the station in my mind, because when you have this advertising model and you have 90% of the advertising growth of online advertising last year was Google and Facebook. And together they're the majority. I don't know exactly what the percentage is, but it's above 50%, the two of them. But all of the growth is accruing to them. No advertising company can compete against what they've built. And what they built is so sinister in its manipulation of people, especially in Facebook's case. I think in Google's less so. But you start to see these abhorrent things happen where people are making kids videos with robotic versions of kid videos to manipulate kids and put keywords in them, and they're just disgusting to make money off of YouTube. And I saw people were doing these insane pranks on YouTube, and all these kids in the schoolyard are watching people do pranks on YouTube. This one idiot put his head into a mixture of cement inside of a microwave with a tube so he could breathe in London. And he has to call the fire department to get him out because he couldn't get himself out of the cement, which is kind of how cement works. But you have a whole group of kids who are like, I want to be internet famous. The way to do it is use YouTube. YouTube people are making millions of dollars a year, so they're in an escalation to who can do the craziest stunt. We have Russian kids hanging off of buildings. I don't know if you've seen these videos and YouTube's allowing. What is Susan Wojcicki thinking over at YouTube that she would allow them to post videos of people hanging off bridges? Literally hanging off bridges to get page views. Yeah,
I have to say the strongest lesson I learned as a human being from my experience at Groupon is how rarely it's true that problems exist in the world because some person is evil, crazy, or stupid.
Right.
And I'm really empathetic for the people that are running these big companies, and you kind of, start out with an advertising business model thinking it's a pretty innocuous thing, not realizing how big you're going to be. And then all of a sudden you're slave to it, and you're slave to being a public company and the need to drive growth. So it's a tricky situation that they're in, and how do they get themselves out of it? I think as consumers and citizens, what we should be thinking about is how we can help. Just think about the incentive systems and how we can help create and influence the incentive systems to make it easier for them to do what they probably can't even admit to themselves is the right thing, because it would completely rip apart their stories of themselves.
It's really interesting because you and I know a lot of these people, and you do think, hey, I'm a good person. I built this thing for good reasons. And then all of a sudden you realize you created Frankenstein. Like, Facebook is a monster now. It's a Frankenstein monster that is the creator of it has no control over it. Yeah. And they've deluded themselves into thinking they have some controls. And I don't know if you saw that testimony where, some senator's like, you have 5 million advertisers. And the person who's like the chief legal officer is like, yes, we have 5 million. He's like, do you know who they are? And he's like, we know their credit card number. And he's like, you got paid in rubles. When you got paid in rubles and the ads were for Black Lives Matter and Hillary Clinton this and Pizzagate that, like, did you have any semblance of getting paid in rubles? And there was from the Russians, and they're not even looking. They're not looking. They're not minding the story. They have no. And then if you and I know what would it take to review those 5 million advertisers? It would take having them put their driver's license in, which would take 5 million down to 2 million.
And it would take correctly anticipating every novel way that people are going to try to, they're going to dream up to hack your system.
Right. And the entire focus for the history of Facebook has been, let's just make it more fluid. Any decision, take friction out. So I don't know if you remember groups, but they added groups, and their novel approach, this is Zuckerberg's way of thinking, is he's so addicted to removing friction. And I know how he thinks, that he was like, well, we should, because I was involved in this situation with the groups. He's like, anybody can add you to a group. What's the harm? You shouldn't be friends with people if they would add you to a group. And you know what happened? They immediately added me and Mark Zuckerberg to NAMBLA. They made a group called NAMBLA, the National Man-Boy Love Association, and they put us both in it. And which was like, okay, that's funny, trolling. They also, somebody created the gay men's choir for their local gay choir in college. They put a bunch of, the person who was doing it put everybody in it. It put it on a bunch of, sophomores in college, freshmen in college's parents' walls who hadn't come out to their parents yet. So they basically outed dozens of people because they're just like, yeah, why have friction? Just add people to whatever group you want. And that's I think you're so right. What do you think is the answer? Is it people just subscribing to the New York Times and Washington Post and news organizations? Just take your wallet out and subscribe? Is that simple? The NPR model?
I like the subscription model. I think it's an improvement over the advertising model, but it's an incomplete answer for sure. I don't know. I think it's if I knew the answer to what would solve the macro incentive systems that drive media companies to do things that aren't necessarily helping us understand each other better.
Yeah.
I'd be the first one out trying to implement it.
I got to tell you, the subscription one and going back to what we had, it's a pretty good start. We know it worked really well for decades when people subscribed, and the journalists didn't have to think about the SEO of their headline or the clickability link bait of it, right? That system was demonstrably better. So why not just go back to that, right? And just start unraveling this nonsense where the journalists, they literally have journalists spending half their time on SEO and clickbait, and they're making them responsible for their actual traffic. Why would you make a journalist responsible for the traffic to their story?
Yeah, making it that transactional and one-off seems like something we could do without.
Literally, I remember Nick Denton created a payment system for everybody at Gawker. People forget this. But I was his competitor at the time, and I was intrigued by it, and so was everybody, where he just said to everybody, we're going to do a bonus system, taking like 10% of our advertising revenue, and the top 10 stories are going to get the top 10% or whatever, and some, weighted system where they would just get these crazy bonuses. And for a year, Gawker writers started getting like 2K bonuses, 3K bonuses. Somebody did something that got like a 5K bonus or a 10K bonus. And essentially what that did was everybody went for sex tapes, which then became the ultimate undoing of Gawker. And it literally crashed under its own weight.
Tying it back somewhat to audio, have you heard, for example, The Daily, the New York Times podcast?
Amazingly well done.
Yeah, it's incredible. So for people who don't know, it's about 20 minutes long, and it comes out every morning. And it's a podcast about what's going on in the news.
One thing, though.
Yeah, it's usually one thing.
Right.
And they go deep. And it's such an incredible thesis on like alternate thesis on how media consumption might work, because you come away at the end of listening to this podcast with a really unfamiliar feeling after reading media, which is you feel kind of good. Like you feel like you understand things a little bit better. And instead of just getting worked up and angry.
Yeah. They don't whip you into a frenzy.
Yeah. And it's not, I think part of it is that audio as a medium has this empathy handicap. Like there's something about listening to people and not being able to look at their messy face.
Yeah.
That, or just
You're
print.
referring to the Steve Bannon episode, which I listened to as well, which he's a mess, and he's obviously, people hate him or love him.
Yeah.
And I don't know if you heard the Steve Bannon one, but they had Steve Bannon on, and he was a little confrontational, whatever, but they were cordial to each other. And it reminded me of Buckley and Vidal, where they would have their debates. I don't know if you've ever seen it. Those original debates. And I don't know if you saw the movie. The movie, or was it something of Rivals? Or I forget. It was an incredible movie where Buckley and Gore Vidal, two just superior intellects, would spar over the most hardcore stuff, but you felt afterwards, like you're saying, I don't feel dirty. I actually feel more educated, and I feel like a good citizen. And it really, I think The Daily has hit that note where you leave it like, okay, I'm more informed, and I don't need to be outraged. I'm closer to the truth.
Yeah, it doesn't need to be as complicated as, touring Puerto Rico in a virtual reality world. Like audio gets you a lot of the way there.
Yeah. That was, talk about clueless. It's back to Zuckerberg, but he's like, look, I'm in VR, standing up to my knees in water here in Puerto Rico. Isn't this amazing? And you're like, dude, you're worth $50 billion. And your premise is that people getting VR headsets for $1,000 is going to suddenly give them empathy of what's going on in Puerto Rico. Like, will you just donate some fucking money to them and call it a day and not put that in your VR demo? Of isn't this great? We're all sitting here in Puerto Rico. It's it's not fucking great. It's fucking horrible. Beep all that stuff out. It's horrible. But this is the world we live in. We've literally put Trump in office, and we put Zuckerberg in charge of the communication medium. Zuckerberg is not capable of communicating and has no idea of social cues and how humans should interact. He is the opposite of how humans should interact, in my mind, based on everything he's done in his career. Andrew Mason's like, I'm not going to get into this. And then you put Trump up there, who's the worst decision maker possible. These are the two forces that are pushing our world forward right now. Trump and Zuckerberg. Neither of these people should have been given the controls of the plane. Literally, we're all on the plane, and we were like, who should fly the plane? I know, Trump and Zuckerberg.
In Zuckerberg's defense, I'll say it would be a hard job for anyone to be in a position of that much power, and they're people who you could do a lot worse. Let's just put it that way. I think his heart is in the right place, and he's trying to figure it out. So
yeah, he's failing miserably. You and I are going to differ. This is Gore Vidal moment here. I think he's failing miserably. I give him the benefit of the doubt, on technical issues. If you want to shard a database, if you want to figure out the best way to cluster this data and sync the hard drives or whatever the heck he's doing over there, great. This is not the person who should make a decision of he laughed and was like, it's farcical to think that an election could be swung by hundreds of millions of people spending hours a day inside of Facebook talking about politics. It's but wait a second. You just said everything can be sold on Facebook except for politics?
And also, you can add music in Descript by just dropping a music file right into the text.
Oh yeah, that's right. I forgot. Right. We're going to get back to the demo. a little detour there from the founder of Detour and me. Can you show that, or is it not in this version you have on your computer?
No. But you asked about it, so
let's go back to it. Yes,
that was a really smooth segue, didn't you think?
A lot of people listen to the show for the tangents.
So where we want to take Descript is to make it, right now it's a single track audio editor, and we want to make it a full-on podcast production suite, and really going further into becoming a new standard for how talk-driven media gets produced. But you can imagine how this idea of a word processor as a metaphor and as a UI paradigm just works so well. Like the way that sequencing and adding music or ambience to your file is going to work is you literally take your song and you drag and drop the file at the word where you want it to start playing.
And you can do those cool like transitions that NPR does.
Yeah, exactly.
I love those.
And we make all that stuff just incredibly easy.
I saw that in, I think you showed me a beta version, and I was like, wow, these are the features that are going to get really amazing, because I would never think of doing anything that artistic, to be honest. I'm like a conversationalist on my podcast. But then when I saw it, I was like, wait a second, maybe I could drop in some audio, and this would be interesting to me. Like I would actually want to play with that, and I would actually want to cut things I've said around. One of the interesting things is I talked to Sam Harris, who's a friend of mine who does a podcast now. I don't know if you listen to Sam's podcast.
I do. I love that podcast.
Did you hear the one with the anti-natalist? Is that the word? Natalist?
No.
He literally had a guy on who believes that bringing a child into the world is morally corrupt because there's so much suffering in the world. Literally, this cat's thesis, he's from South Africa, it's very nihilistic. Like, it's just unconscionable. Why would you have a child? I was just waiting for Sam to ask him, so why don't you kill yourself? Like, if the world is so bad. But his premise was kind of like, if you're born into it, suicide probably not a great solution, but just don't bring any more people into it. So just let the human race fizzle out. But Sam says on his podcast that he wants people's position to be represented perfectly and doesn't want people to regret that they misspoke in the moment. So he is willing to edit people if they feel they said something or take something out or correct something if he feels it misrepresented them. What do you think of that? Just as because it would be super easy to do.
Yeah, I wholeheartedly agree with that approach.
Yeah.
Again, like I'm somebody who is often who talks in order to figure out what I think.
Right.
So, sometimes you just need to think out loud, and you find yourself saying things. In my case, it might be on CNBC that as soon as it comes out of your mouth, you're like, I don't believe that.
I reach for those words. I try to grab them and pull them back, right?
Yeah. I mean, or not quite like that. Or like I might say something mostly because I think it's funny.
Yes.
More than because I think it's true. Or it has a truth to it or something. But it's
sarcasm.
And so that's the beauty of print, right? Is that when I'm writing, I have the ability to take it back. I have the ability to edit.
Yeah.
And it's always been a limitation of audio that it doesn't have that ability to edit. And when you bring that superpower to it, then it really just, because other than that, audio is such an expressive medium, right? It has this empathy handicap, and you just understand what people mean so much more precisely
you get tone.
When you can hear their voice than just from reading the text.
Yeah, it really is amazing to me how I think it's really the reason why we're all disengaged from Twitter in a way is because tone is hard to do in 140 characters, now 280, right? Tone is hard to do in text. Then you add the limitation of the amount of words, and then you add the spontaneity of the platform. Then you add the fact that people who don't like you, everybody gets to engage with everybody on an equal footing, including people who maybe are less informed. And then you have all these bot accounts that are fake accounts. And so like I put up this Twitter poll. I was like, I'm having dinner with somebody who is of North Korean descent. Literally their father is from North Korea and escaped. And we were just talking about like the cost of democracy. It's a big, crazy question to ask yourself, but we find ourselves answering this. Like, would the cost of 10% of the population of North Korea be worth or the potential risk of the 10% of people dying in North Korea be worth turning that into a democracy and freeing those people from what they're in? It's like that's literally the question facing society right now. So I put that out there as a poll. And people are like, literally Jalopnik, which is a Gawker property, they have it in for me, but they literally wrote like, rich VC, I'm not a VC, like suggesting 10% is a viable cost of democracy. And it's like, it was a poll. There's a question. A poll is inherently a question. I'm not suggesting that it's a rhetorical question. It's a discussion starter, but we can't even have a discussion about a topic like that in today's society. It's nuts.
Yeah, Sam Harris is a funny example because he does these incredibly long interviews, sometimes over 2 hours.
Yeah.
With the whole idea being that give people the time to get their nuanced ideas out there. And that's what makes it so great.
Yeah.
And so he's kind of active there, and then he's active in the antithesis of that, which is Twitter.
Right.
Which is express yourself in 140 or 280 characters.
Yeah.
And they just couldn't be more opposed in terms of in terms of what they are trying to help the writer achieve. And
it's rattled him a bit too. I know, because like I've had, we have dinner every couple of weeks or months, and like Twitter was like, he was getting in it with people like Sternovich or like these alt writers or whatever, and I was just like, you're Sam Harris, like these are mental midgets, like these are mental. I probably shouldn't have said the word midgets, right? Is that an politically incorrect word? Can I use Descript to go back and say?
We can help you with that. Yeah.
Yeah. Mentally incompetent people or just like low IQ people. I don't know. IQ challenge.
Keep going
people.
with this. Let's find some more adjectives.
There's got to be a way to say this without offending everybody. Anyway, it's like, why are you engaging with these people? You're Sam Harris. Like, you've got these incredible Nobel laureate like authors, just geniuses on your program. Like, just leave it at that. Do not engage on Twitter. It's just a zero-sum game for someone like him. Like, there's just no upside in interacting with these, not smart people, dumb people. All right. So what about video? This is, I guess, the thing that I guess will be like is this eventually going to be a video editor? Are we going to be able to do that? Or is that is that a bridge that's way too hard to cross at this point? Because one would think, like, if you could do this, maybe in 10 years, you could do video version of this?
Yeah, no, I don't think it's 10 years away. I think it's faster than that. I mean, the same concepts apply. You think of vlog, editing a vlog, where it might be just looking at 60 minutes worth of thumbnails of your face, and how tedious that is to edit. So there's a bunch of video related applications that we think this idea could be very powerfully applied towards. Audio is the foundation of it all, because really what we are creating is a production environment that lets you create by editing talk or editing a script. And so we have to get it right with audio, and then we start thinking about video. But we're really excited to start exploring video.
Yeah, see, that would be incredible if somebody was giving a talk, or even you and I having a conversation, if you could make the best of clip, like the highlight clip of this discussion, and just boom, 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 edit it on the fly to make a clip. This is where clips are so important for, I feel like, podcasts, because clips for us are a way for us to just inform the audience of what the podcast was, to give them a chance to decide if they want to go all in on it, right? And so many times people let a podcast go by because they're like, But if you can make a trailer of the podcast and pull people in, which is what we try to do with our clips, it's like sort of like these little mini trailers to get you to sample it. And if you like the guest, you then come watch the full thing. You could really enable that, like these supercuts.
Yeah, that was one of the first things we started using Descript for at Detour, was creating trailers of our tours. And it was just so easy because you could go through the tour, find the bit that you wanted, copy and paste the different words together.
Yeah.
And again, like anyone can do that. It takes a couple minutes to create a trailer or something that might normally take hours.
What do you think the secret is to your success in making really interesting, refined products? Because you've really made interesting things in the world, like just founder to founder. I'm like always, when you make something, I'm always like giving it a little bit of thought. And
yeah,
how did you get so good at this? What do you think your secret is?
It's mostly just being a genius.
It is.
Yeah. And just like being, and none of that, I wasn't born with any of that.
Right.
I just
took
worked really hard to become a genius.
Right.
No.
In sincerity. Like when you think about product, I mean, if you don't want to take the compliment, fine. But when you look at it, what do you think your secrets are or techniques are to building products that people love? Because let's face it, you built a lot of products that a large number of people love, and you figured out that connection between a use case and a product, right? And a product that scales. So how do you do it? And what's your advice to somebody trying to figure out if this product should exist in the world?
Let me tell you how I do it.
Yeah.
And maybe that'll be useful, or maybe it won't. We were talking earlier off air about how do founders start companies? Like, do they start by saying, I want to start a startup, and here's a list of ideas that could potentially be good, and I'm going to do this one because this feels like the best idea? Or do they just get hold of something that they can't shake and that compels them to do the startup? And there are people, like an example of the first is Jeff Bezos. Like Jeff Bezos feels like the canonical example of someone that could have been born into any era and would have been like a super billionaire. Because the way that he went about building Amazon just seems so methodical. Like, I want to do a company. What seems like the right opportunity? Like, oh, the internet is this thing, and where could I start? Oh, I could sell books, and what should I name the company? It should start with an A so that it shows up at the top of the listing sites or the directories, and so on. For me, I mean, I was a music student in school. And I got into coding because I thought it was a more effective way of getting ideas out there than writing music. At some point, that occurred to me, and then I just did the ideas that I wanted. And I mean, it's really like I'm smart, but I meet people who are way smarter than me all the time. I work hard at it, and I don't give up. And I just have a sense of being grateful and lucky for having the opportunity to be alive in a time when you can pursue what feels like a first-class creative venture and be so rewarded for it. Like, it's really
unique moment in history, isn't it?
Yeah. And especially living out here now in San Francisco, you feel kind of like pinching yourself constantly to be around such a exciting time.
People are so enthusiastic and accepting here. As somebody who grew up in New York, Brooklyn, and you grew up in Chicago, which is, I think, similar to New York in that vibe, where people are cynical, people are questioning, and they keep it real. And there's a charm to that, like the bluntness and the candidness. But out here, people are just like, I found it so amazing how they hear somebody else's dream. And sometimes it's like, that's a terrible idea. And they're just like, oh my God, you're going to totally crush it. It's going to be awesome. And you're like, I'm sitting there at dinner. And I'm like, that's a terrible idea. That's never going to work. And a million people have tried this already. Like, it's not going to work. Like, people have already done video sites. Like, video on the internet doesn't work. Real networks, like, get a clue. Like, YouTube's not going to work. Right?
I mean, and the crazy thing about that is if I was starting, so we talked earlier about The Point, which is the company that ultimately became Groupon. If someone came to me with that idea for The Point, knowing what I know today, I'd say that's the dumbest idea. Yeah, like where do I begin in telling you all the reasons that thing is going to fail? Right. But it doesn't matter, because what matters is that you get yourself into the muck, and then a phoenix may rise from the ashes once you're backed against the wall. And that's what happened with Groupon. I guess that's what's happening now with Detour pivoting into Descript. Yeah. And
it is like the canvas, the limitations of the canvas, right? The ticking clock of the runway, the pressure that we put upon ourselves starting these companies. In a way, it's a creative pressure, right? And if you only have so much canvas, if you only have 10 minutes on air or 15 minutes of film stock or, a 3x4 canvas to paint on or a limited amount of paint, you're going to really think about that, right? There's something about that limitation of...
It's so true. I hate to admit it, but it's so true. When we made the pivot to Groupon was when our investors started threatening to take away the money from The Point, and I had to lay people off, and our backs were against the wall. And it's like, come up with something now. when I started Detour, I didn't raise any outside money. I funded it all myself because I had by and large good experiences with venture capitalists, but I was like, you know what? I just want to do something on my own for a little while.
Yeah.
I want to see what it would be like to do something with none of those constraints or needing to think about
a board or investors, reporting to anybody.
Yeah, I mean,
profitability.
And it's a really serious responsibility to be a steward of other people's capital. Like I take that really seriously, and I wanted to be free of that. And by the time it came to Detour, I was like, I want it back. Yeah. I want external money because I want that constraint. I miss it. I miss having somebody that's constantly focused on the bottom line to counterbalance my focus on the product.
Interesting. So having stakeholders, it kind of ups your game in a way.
It does, in a way that we all wish that perhaps we didn't need. But I feel like it can be a really good thing when you have great investors, and we have Alex Rampell on our board from Andreessen Horowitz, who's just an awesome guy. And
so, you raised money for Descript. I don't know if you announced that today on December 12th. We're recording this, I think, the day before, but today's the launch day. You're announcing the funding then?
Yes, yes.
Did you announce the amount or?
$5 million.
$5 million bucks in Andreessen Horowitz. Mm-hmm. Great firm. Great. Who's your partner over there, you said?
Alex Rampell.
Yeah. Smart cat?
Super smart. I mean, I got to know him when I was running Groupon, and he was like one of those guys that he was running TrialPay. I would sit down with him and I'd be like, you're what I imagined people who are doing what I'm doing are like.
Right.
You're really smart. Like you should be.
You should be me.
It should be, exactly.
The reverse.
So it's really fun to get to work with him.
It's interesting. They asked Bob Dylan at some point. I don't know which album it was. I want to say Blood on the Tracks, which is, I think, my favorite Bob Dylan album, or amongst my top 3 Dylan albums. And they were like, so tell us, what was the inspiration for the album? And he's like, well, I had 3 records left on my contract with Columbia, and I had to get a record out, and it was this date, and that was the inspiration. And the person who is asking the question from Rolling Stone or whatever it was is just so disappointed that the reason their God did this incredible album, one of the great 20 albums of all time, is because it was due.
Right.
That was the reason. The best reason Dylan could come up with this. Well, it was due. I had to get him an album.
Yeah, similarly, one of the other best 20 albums of all time, Hardly Working, my album of motivational business music.
Yes, right.
Available on iTunes, Spotify.
Yeah. And Rock and Roll Hall of Fame is just not.
Well, they don't do that until you're older.
You have to age in, right?
Yeah.
Which I don't think is fair. I think, for pure genius like yours.
There's a petition. There's something on change.org. So
is there? Yeah. They really should start I think they should look at the number of albums sold, and with yours, it's clearly.
It's in the dozens.
It's in the literal dozens.
Yeah. But anyway, so I recorded that, and I got the studio for 5 days, and it was this explosion of creative froth.
Yeah.
That just spread all over the tape machine, and having the constraint of doing it in that short period of time, I think couldn't have happened any other way. Yeah, it's the greatness that comes from knowing that you got to be out of that studio. Yeah. And somebody else is coming in. Right. But I think that's where the collaborations happen too, because if I remember correctly, you and Kanye overlapped or something, and that's where the diss track. Is that ever going to be released? The crossover album with Kanye? It's never. I can't talk about it because I think there were non-disclosure signed. All right, listen, everybody, take a minute. If you know anybody who is editing audio, it is your duty right now as a listener to This Week in Startup to email them and say, check out this hot new shit, Descript.com. Stop what you're doing. If you're driving right now, pull over. Put your car in self-driving mode if it's a Tesla, and go ahead and tell any audio people you know to check out Descript because it is mind-blowingly good. We're using it here. We've been part of the beta, and my team, or the alpha, whatever it is just in love with it. Thanks for building it. Thanks for being a cool dude. Yeah, no, thank you. Yeah. It's been so fun. It's been, yeah. Well, has it? I mean, Yeah, why not?
Why not?
Let's go
Sure.
with that.
Let's go with fun.
Yeah, people want to believe we enjoyed this.
We enjoyed it, right? It wasn't. It was awkward at times. I was trying to pull you into awkward conversations. You weren't having none of it.
No, you're really skilled at like talking, getting over your skis, and I'm learning from you. So that's what we were seeing. That was the awkwardness, is studying the master.
Just watching me about to tumble down the mountain. It's just like one of those great experiences. Like, wow, look, there he goes. There he goes, talking about Zuckerberg again. All right, everybody. Well, thanks again, Emmy Award-winning producer Jackie, and to all of our sponsors. And make sure you check out Descript.com and follow @Andrew Mason. We'll see you all next time. Bye-bye.